Configuration Wizard Front Panel Configuration. First, let's take a look at how we control the functions from the front panel of the ZonePro and what can be controlled. Pressing the Output 1 Select button displays the possible parameters for Output 1. By now pressing the number 1 button and turning the data encoder wheel, the gain or volume for Output 1 can be controlled. If we now press the number 2 button, then turn the data encoder wheel, we can now select the source which will feed this output. By now pressing the number 3 button, and then turning the data encoder wheel, we can mute and unmute this output. It's that easy to control the parameters for each zone from the front panel. Press the data encoder in to enter the utility menu. Here you can adjust the LCD contrast and set the time interval for the home timeout function or turn it off. If the home timeout function is on, after the predetermined time has expired, the home page will be displayed. From the Configuration Wizard, click the Next button until you reach the front panel configuration page. This page will only be available if using a ZonePro model with front panel controls. This page allows the programmer to select what the end user will be able to control from the front panel of the ZonePro. The functions which can be controlled from the ZonePro's front panel are source selection for each output, page steering using the page 1 and page 2 buttons, output muting, and output volume control. So if I disable source selection for output 1, now an end user will not be able to select a source for output 1 from the front panel. I can also select which sources will be selectable for each zone from the front panel by checking and unchecking the different source inputs for each output. Whenever using a zone controller to control the parameters which the front panel can also control, you will lose the capabilities of controlling these parameters from the front panel. For example, when using a ZC3 for source selection capabilities from the front panel configuration page are no longer available. So you need to decide if you want to control these parameters from the front panel or a zone controller. When controlling output or zone volume from the front panel, the programmer can set the maximum and minimum constraints for the volume control, or simply disable this function altogether. When disabled, no volume control is available from the front panel. With the Mute Enable checkbox, the programmer can also decide whether or not the end user will have output muting functionality from the front panel. Here, I've assigned a ZC2 for output volume control for output 1. Since the ZC2 performs level and muting control, these options are no longer selectable for front panel control. Now, let's take a look at page steering. Page steering allows you to dynamically page different zones. Page steering can be controlled from either the front panel or a zone controller, like the ZC3 or ZC7. So if I enable the Page 1 checkbox, this tells the ZonePro that I want to use a microphone connected to the ML1 input for page steering from the front panel. If I enable the Page 2 checkbox, now I'm telling the ZonePro I want to use a microphone connected to the ML2 input for page steering control from the front panel. I now have a numerical parameter and a checkbox for each output or zone. These numerical values allow me to create different combinations or groups of outputs to page. For example, on Group 2, I'll select Output 1, on Group 3, Output 2, Group 4, Output 3, Group 5, Output 4, Group 6, Output 5, and Group 7, Output 6. Now I'll make Group 8 an all page, so I'll select Outputs 1 through 6. As you can see, I didn't select any output checkboxes for Group 1. This is so I can leave a selection for a No page. Now when I press the Page 1 button from the front panel and turn the data encoder wheel, I can toggle through my different page stair groups, thereby paging only the zones I would like to page. You've now seen all the different pages in the configuration wizard. Make sure all these parameters in the configuration wizard are appropriately configured before you start creating your scenes. Neglecting to do so may require you to recreate the scenes at a later time. Now that we're done configuring our ZonePro program, we simply click Finish. If you're already online with the ZonePro device, your program will be stored right to the device. If you're offline, you can save this program file and then load it into a ZonePro device at a later time. We'll talk more about saving and opening ZonePro program files in later training modules.